Good day, students. Welcome to basic science lesson. In our class today, we'll be looking at activities of living things. In our previous class, we started the topic activities of living things, and we say activities of living things are those things that living things do that no living things don't. And in other words, we call them characteristics of living things. And we say this characteristics is known by an abbreviation, Mr. Niger D. And in our previous class, we were able to look at activity number 1, movement. And in our class today, we looked at the next activity, which is feeding. Feeding. Feeding includes obtaining food, chewing it, digesting it, and using it to build up the body. Remember in our last class, we said the act of taking in of food is called feeding. And then this feeding includes obtaining food, how we get the food, how the food is chewed, how the food is digested, and how it is used to build up the body. And animals are divided into 3 groups depending on what they eat. Animals are categorized into 3 depending on what they feed on. Number 1, omnivores. Omnivores. These are animals that eat plants and animals, e.g. chicken, and we have human beings. Number 2, we have carnivores. Carnivores are animals that eat flesh, e.g. lion, leopard, spider, etc. And the third category is herbivores. And herbivores are animals that eat grass only, e.g. goat, sheep, cattle, etc. So based on what animals feed on, they are divided into 3: omnivores, carnivores, and herbivores. These different groups have special features that enable them to feed as they do. The features include the methods of feeding, of obtaining food, type of teeth, and type of feeding system. Plants make their own food by photosynthesis. Plants don't depend on animals for food. They make their own food through the process called photosynthesis, which is the process by which green plants manufacture their own food using sunlight, water, carbon dioxide, and chlorophyll. Organs of feeding. Organs of feeding. And the organisms, based on their mode of feeding, have different organs that are used for feeding. The first category are the omnivores. Omnivores, those are animals that feed on plants and also flesh. The organs of feeding. Omnivores have limbs and teeth, not very specialized, able to eat all kinds of food. And the methods of feeding. They collect, chew, and swallow all kinds of food. 2. Carnivores. Carnivores have claws, specialized teeth, with strong, sharp canines. And the method of feeding. Chase and overtake prey, hold it with their claws, bite it to death, tear it, and eat it. Remember, we say carnivores are animals that feed on flesh. 3. Herbivores. Herbivores. Herbivores' organs of feeding have flat premolars and molars with ridges for chewing grass. And remember, we say herbivores eat plants only. And the methods of feeding: cut grass with incisors, chew with molars and premolars. Some chew the cuds. Purpose of feeding. Purpose of feeding. The purpose of feeding is to obtain energy from food, and the energy is being used to carry out our day-to-day activities. Respiration. Activity number 2, respiration. This is a series of chemical reactions in which food is broken down to release energy. Remember in our last class we said respiration is divided into 2 parts. The first part is the external, which is the breathing. And then the second part is the internal, which is the breaking down of complex food substances by the oxygen of the air to release energy. And this occurs in the cell, and we call it cellular respiration. So when the food that is being eaten is digested, by the time the oxygen of the air acts on this food, it further breaks down the food to release energy that is used for day-to-day activities, and you call this process respiration. Organs of respiration. Organs of respiration. We have types of living things, we have respiratory organs, and we have methods of obtaining air. The first one there is human being. Human being use the lungs for respiration, and the method of obtaining air. They obtain oxygen from the air by breathing. Then number 2, we have birds. Birds use their lungs too for breathing. They obtain oxygen from the air by breathing. And 3, we have reptiles. Reptiles include organisms like lizards, like crocodiles, like snake. They are under the group reptiles, and they use their lungs too for respiration. They obtain oxygen from the air by breathing. Then the fourth category is toads/frogs, and the toads and the frogs use their lungs, skin, and mouth. These organisms have dual habitation. You see them on land and you see them in water. They are both aquatic and terrestrial. And then method of obtaining air. They absorb oxygen from the air, and water, which could be dissolved energy, oxygen. Number 5, fishes. Fishes use their gills, and method of obtaining air. Fishes pass water containing dissolved oxygen between the gills. The gills absorb oxygen from the water. The gill is modified for aquatic respiration. Number 6, plants. Plants do not have any specialized organ of respiration, and the method of obtaining air. Air goes in and out of the leaves through stomata. So in plants, air goes in and out of the leaf through the stomata of their plant. Purpose of respiration. Purpose of respiration. Number 1, to take oxygen of the air into the body of the living thing by breathing. The main reason is that to take oxygen into the body of the living thing. Number 2, to use the oxygen taken into the body to break down food in the body to release energy. Without the oxygen taken in, the food cannot be broken down in a process called respiration to release energy. So another purpose is to use the oxygen taken into the body to break down food in the body to release energy. And with that, we have come to the end of our class today. And we started with looking at other activities of living things. We've looked at feeding, and we say it's the act of taking in of food. And then we said different organisms feed on different food substances. We have the omnivores, the carnivores, and the herbivores based on the type of food they feed on. And then we also move on to look at purpose of feeding. And then we now moved on to look at respiration, which we say is a series of reactions that involves the breaking down of food substances to release energy. And we looked at the different organs of respiration in different organisms and the method of respiration. And then we move on to look at the purpose of respiration. When we meet next, we'll look at other activities of living things. So far we have looked at movement, we have looked at feeding, and we have looked at respiration. The remaining activities, we'll look at them in our next class. Thank you and have a wonderful day.